I have to say that I had zero expectations the first time I set eyes on Salvador, Brazil. But boy, was I surprised. This is the original capital of Brazil. The capital city of Brazil started in Salvador, moved then to Rio de Janeiro, and finally settled in Brasilia, which was a fabricated city just created for the capital. But the point is, Salvador was the original capital, meaning the architecture here is some of the most historic in all of Brazil, and we get this very unique Portuguese colonial style that you don't really see elsewhere in Latin America. Absolutely magnificent. Now, when this was the capital city of Brazil, it was a very rich city, mostly for its sugarcane exports. And the reason this was such a rich place is because they were bringing slaves over from Africa to work in the sugarcane fields. Now, the capital actually moved because the powers that be decided there was too much of an African influence. They wanted a more Western European influence, so they moved their capital to Rio. But it still means that here we have 80%, 86% of the local people being of pure African descent. That's the highest percentage outside of Africa. So that's a pretty amazing statistic, and it really gives the city a sort of an African ambiance. Okay, so you'll see people dancing in the street. It really has this joie de vivre that you find in many African cities. And you know, that mix of the African and the European culture gave us some pretty unique things, such as capoeira, that sort of martial arts slash dance that you'll see all over. And there's some nice capoeira shows, but you'll often just see it on the streets or even on the beaches, people just practicing their capoeira. Now this city is literally divided into upper and lower sections. What you're seeing here, believe it or not, is an elevator you can take between the two halves of the city. And the lower half, I always say, is where life happens. That's where the markets are, people are busy, they're bustling, they're going to work. And the upper half is more the historic center, great for tourism because that's where a lot of the sites are. Now in that upper part of the city, we have the Pelerihno, one of the most picturesque parts of the city, one of the most picturesque parts, I would say, of Brazil. This is a pedestrian-only section, a very historic section, the original sort of capital city center of Brazil. And we can walk through the Pelerihno and just appreciate some of the great architecture here. There's you know, all cobblestone streets, several churches, and old Baroque style Portuguese churches right here in the center of the Pelerihno. Now again, this is a very historic city. This is where, you know, the Portuguese first settled and set up their sort of camp. And so there is some really nice history, really worth taking a guided tour and learning about the forts that surround the city to protect this Portuguese colony. And of course, these fantastic beaches as well, really worth getting out and exploring some of the beaches around Salvador. So that's it. Hope you learned something. Hope that was helpful. Please visit me for more at www.kevinsworldvideotour.com. Thanks for listening.